Hi again, folks, and welcome to another episode of Mad About Madeira. And we are the Tysons, yeah, like the boxer. So, no relation as far as I know. So, we're here to talk about our trip to Madeira, in part. We definitely cannot tell the entire trip, but before we say anything, look. So, for the folks who are from Madeira, I guess you'll recognize what this is. I still don't know what it is. I bought it, don't know what it is, but apparently it's some traditional.
When we went to a restaurant in Madeira, where we had one of the traditional meals, they were playing music and
Traditional
like the
music
traditional
and traditional
Madeiran music,
dances.
and they came out and they were doing the traditional Madeiran dance, and then at the end of it, they had these for sale, like various little knickknacks from Madeira that would remind you of the place.
Yes, so got one, brought it all the way back. So uh, I also got it because obviously, like in our first video, like I mentioned, we have our heritage that comes there from Madeira. So it only makes sense that we have one home in the house. We haven't let our 4-year-old toddler see this as yet because it will be in pieces. He's not going to appreciate what it's really all about.
Pretty
So
much.
we're definitely making sure we hold that away from him.
The last
But
time we spoke to you guys, we did the Lisbon, basically the first part of our trip where we spent 2 days in Lisbon. Um, Again, when we planned the trip, Madeira was our main focus. So as much as we spent an entire week overall in Portugal, 3 of it was spent in Lisbon, while 4 was spent in Madeira because that was the main focus of our trip, to go to Madeira, to meet family, to see the place. Which is why my husband was saying that we can't exactly fit 4 days worth of activities and telling you guys into one video because it will be long and it'll probably be over an hour because we try to do as much as we possibly could have in the 4 days. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna tell you the first 2 days, and then the next 2 days will be in the follow-up video.
well, I told her that we'll just more or less go with the flow.
Or that.
Not to. Someone subscribed and he was like 45 minutes. So gonna try not to do that.
Yeah.
So gonna try to see if we can limit this a little, make this a little bit shorter. But I will start by basically talking about our entry out there into Madeira. So we left Lisbon, had no issues, got on the flight, an EasyJet flight out there. Now, one of the things that I did know is that Madeira is one of the more difficult airports to fly into. You have to have some sort of a special training to fly into that island. And one of the reasons why you have to have that special training is that Madeira has these weird winds that blow out there. So you have to be careful because you may have one thing 100 feet up the road or in the flight path where the winds are blowing in one direction, and the next thing you know, you turn and it's blowing in another direction and cross winds and those type of things, which in the past have caused airlines to crash. Of course, we don't hear that going on out in Madeira.
Not just
So it
crash,
tells you.
but I think the week before we went, like we're part of a couple of Facebook groups that deal with travel to Madeira and things to do in Madeira and stuff like that. And like one of the complaints that was just reoccurring was that flights were not able to land, and this was the week before we traveled there.
And and what happens with that? Sorry to interrupt, but what happens with that is that that's one of the complaints about Madeira. Not a bad complaint, mind you, but especially in the winter months because you have the crazy winds that come through. Is that depending on the airline, a lot of flights, as my wife said, are either canceled or they're diverted
Rescheduled.
somewhere else. But here's the fortunate thing for us. It was interesting because when we got there, the days before they were canceling a whole bunch of flights. And after we left, 4 days later, the bad weather moved back
They
in,
were
and they were
canceling
canceling
flights
flights
again.
again. But we made it in with no issues. There were no issues. I didn't feel any turbulence or anything. So we go ahead and we fly into Madeira.
For me, sorry to cut you, babe, but for me, okay, the landing was kind of scary-ish in the sense that, so we're on the flight and I'm talking to him, and then out of nowhere the runway is there. Like it, like on other flights you see them line up and stuff like that. It felt like we went from the air straight to the runway, no lining up, no nothing. So I kind of jumped when we landed because I was just like, I turned to him and I was like, wait, that's the runway? And then the woman in front of us, she was like, oh my God, we're landing. And
Yeah.
it was funny because the runway literally came out of nowhere. So it was kind of scary in that regard.
No,
But
I had fun with it.
of course you did.
It was pretty nice. But the thing is, it's when the jet made that bank, like it's coming in, of course, from the northeast from Lisbon. As it's flying in, it has to make that turn and come back in. So when it turned, and you could see on the left hand side of the flight, it was like I looked up on the hillside and I see these. I see the homes and I see and I'm like, we've seen so many videos of this place, we've seen so many photos, and it's like, wow. And then when we landed and we got off the flight, and I'm just like looking around, I'm like, the first thing that I said, I don't know what my wife thought, but the first thing that crossed my mind is this place is far more beautiful than how I've seen it in videos. As a matter of fact, we have a 75-inch television right across there right now with 4K or 8K resolution. And still, with that kind of resolution, when we got there, I could not believe how beautiful the
I'm not
place
gonna
looked.
lie, I did not look as many videos as he did. I am not a television person. Like I watch, like when I want to watch my shows and stuff, I do it on my phone. So he would be watching stuff on television. Like I'd come downstairs out of the room and I'd take a glance at it. So for me, he saw a lot of stuff. In fact, I let him plan our whole itinerary for Madeira because I was working up until we left, and it was just like I was trying to put things in place. Like I handled this side of it, ensure we had everything that we needed and all of that. He was more I spoke to this person in Madeira, we're gonna do this. I saw this, we're gonna do that. So for me, when we got there, first of all, after the landing and we went into the airport, I was kind of annoyed a little bit because the line was long and it was just,
What line?
babe, the line
To go where?
through immigration for them to look at our stuff.
Maybe I was having too much fun. I don't even remember that.
He
I
was
don't
having
even
too
remember that.
much fun. But or was that Lisbon?
That was Lisbon. That was Lisbon. As a matter
When
of fact,
we landed
yes,
with all that with all the
yes.
people.
That,
Okay.
as a matter of fact, there was a picture online today where people say they were waiting for 3 hours, but it moved
Wait,
efficiently.
so when we got to Madeira, the
Cristiano Ronaldo.
the Cristiano Ronaldo airport. See, I know the name of the airport. We were out pretty quickly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It wasn't anything. We just came downstairs because I guess we were already in the country.
Okay.
You know, we just flew out of one part of the country to another part of the country. This
Okay.
happened to be an island.
Okay, yeah. So we went
just,
and we got our
Yeah, we
bags.
just waltzed right on.
So I was on the side of the plane that I really didn't get to see anything while we were landing, which I guess is why the runway came out of nowhere. I saw mostly water, so I wasn't able to, really see much the houses and stuff. And then when we got out of the airport, so my cousin was there, my fourth or fifth cousin. I think.
Okay, let me explain this little part here. I think I explained it in the very first video, but I'm going to add some more details here right now. Right after I booked the tickets, July or August of 2021, the summer of 2021, I decided to now start looking more into this. And being that I had found out by that time that my wife and I had ancestry over in Portugal, but for her specifically Madeira, and her great-grandfather's surname was somewhat unique, Teixeira Doria, or Dorie, as they say over here. I figured I'd put that name on these Madeiran pages on Facebook, and someone came out of the woodwork basically saying that they were a Doria, and I think someone else mentioned it to someone else, and that person came on, and that person that came on turned out to be someone that is related to her. Again, neither one of them knew each other existed until then. And we started talking back and forth, and he was so gracious. He was so great. He was very, sometimes you meet family, they don't know you, you're distant, they're just meeting you for the first time, nothing much more goes on. But he actually was rather endearing, rather welcoming. So I remember, and the reason why he showed up at the airport, this is the reason why I want to mention this. I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, listen, is it possible you can look out for a rental car for us, an automatic rental car? I know Europeans like their stick shifts." And I said, "Can you look one up for us?" And he goes and he says, "Hey, give me some time. I'll go take a look." He comes back and he says, "Hey, these things are rather expensive over here right now. Tell you what, we have a car, an automatic. He sent me a picture. He said, you guys can use this while you're there." So, needless to say, I wrote him. And when I wrote him just before we got there, he asked me, "When are we coming in? What time?" And I was already thinking we're going to grab a taxi. And he said, "No, I'll be there for you guys." So, when we walked out the airport, there he is, her cousin.
My cousin, and he was extremely, extremely friendly and
Yes.
gracious and everything. And it was just like he
Like
was
we've
really,
known him. Yeah.
he was really welcoming.
Yeah.
So we exchanged hugs and everything, and right away he said to my husband, "Hey, do you want to drive?" So
Like,
my husband
wow.
was like, "No, not
You can drive us around.
you drive first, and then let's see how it goes." So
Right.
we were expecting him to take us to the airport,
To
to
the
the hotel. But what he ended up doing was taking me to our family's,
Ancestral home.
not just home, but land. Um, and he showed me where basically my ancestors came from.
Well, for those watching this, let me just go ahead and just explain to you here because I don't know how much names you remembered. But the first place he took us was to, because right outside the airport going east, it's the third or second largest city or town in Madeira, Machico. And he took us over there, so we got the view from right off the hill looking over to the city, and it was just so beautiful. So then he took us down into the town, and he took us over to the statue of Tristão Vaz Teixeira. Took us right to that statue, and my wife was there, and she can tell you how she felt when she looked up at a statue of someone who was most likely one of her great ancestors, Tristão Vaz Teixeira. Remember when we went to the statue? What happened there?
It's not just the statue, but the whole experience, going to all the places that, seeing all the homes they built, him pointing out like areas that they discovered or they built. That we have a whole family mountain. For me, that was like I can't even describe it accurately because as someone who did not know much of their ancestry because like I said before, that wasn't spoken much about in my family. It felt like there was a certain comfort to it, where it's like I finally know where my family came from, or at least some of them. Oddly enough, it felt like home, and I still can't put it into words, but it was the type of experience that you only get once in a lifetime, and it was pretty amazing to walk in the places that my ancestors walked, that they built, and to just find family there was beyond amazing. And not just family, but welcoming family, because the family dynamic in the Caribbean is extremely weird. As I mentioned before, I didn't know I don't know who, like I don't know my father, I don't know his family. So to be able to trace my roots that far back and go to a place where my ancestors came from, it was a life-changing experience.
Just to add just to add some color to this, and I'm gonna let my wife finish with that part, and maybe this may jog her memory. So after we left Machico, we drove up a little further, I guess, to an area known as Porta da Cruz. specifically in an area known as Fayal, if I'm not mistaken, that's what it's called. And the next thing I know, her cousin, we did not quite know what he was doing. He says she's gonna go see her great grandfather's land or area. And the next thing I know, he made this turn off the main road. He goes up these winding hills, and we ended up near a cemetery, a family cemetery. And then he pointed out to us and he said, "See that mountain over there? It's called Peña de Aguiar. I could be saying this wrong, but Eagle Mountain or the Mountain of the Eagles." And he explained to us that the whole Doria clan, Doria,
Doria.
Doria, the whole clan, this was where they occupied. This area was their ancestral land. So when they came in from mainland Portugal or wherever they came from in Europe, of course the family started out in Italy and they ended up on the Iberian Peninsula. They made it over to Madeira, and that was the part of the island that they occupied or were given or where they dominated. So they were known as the lords of the or the lords of Eagle Mountain. So as my wife and I stood up in an elevated area, she's looking all around and all her eyes can see. That's where all her family and everything basically lived. Now, to say her great great grandfather, to say we know specifically which home, which house, which area he was in, we don't really know, but we figured that's pretty much where he was from, because when we looked at the passport records showing her great great grandfather going to Demerara, which we call Guyana today, which is where my wife is from, when we looked at it, it showed the address of the person, Jose Teixeira Doria. It showed it, and it showed his address, and the address was Fayal, Faial, right in that very vicinity, which is where we were. So we looked down, and my wife was able to see all of this, and that was pretty much all of her family lands. And this is what she was talking about. She was welled up with emotions just to see all of that.
I cried.
Oh yes, she did.
Because, like I said, it's just one of those things where you know where you come from, and it was just like questions were answered, where I just knew where that side of my family came from. I am 7% Madeiran. I mean, I guess looking at me, you could probably see a little bit of it, but I'm 7% Madeiran.
And her DNA test specifically, mine just says Portugal, just general Portugal. Hers says specifically Madeira.
And it doesn't split it up in any way or anything like that. It's
just
7% Portuguese, specifically Madeiran. So
yes.
I know my ancestry came directly from there.
Right.
So after the tour, he took us around. He didn't have a lot of time because he had to go pick his kids up. After the tour, he basically just gave us the car, told us that the tank is full, and to just have fun. And from there, so he lives in Funchal. The hotel that we were staying at was in Funchal as well. So from his place, after we dropped him off, we drove to the hotel. And I can't even say a hotel because it didn't feel like a hotel. It was a magnificent place. It, like, when you look at those old movies, okay, so there wasn't a castle, but the grounds, it gave me, so Emily Bronte, Jane and Jane Austen are two of my favorite authors, and like when we went into the compound for the place, it felt like it was out of a Jane Austen or Emily Bronte novel, where it's like, this is the great room, and this is where you have breakfast and stuff, and it felt really old, homey,
like buildings between a garden.
Yeah, like buildings between a garden, and then there's the pool that was heated, and then there's this cute little, like, there's the gym, and looking over the pool, and it was breathtaking. It was so beautiful. Like, it did not feel like a hotel. And the view, and then when we went into the room, even more so, it didn't feel like a hotel. It just felt extremely homey, and it was just, It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was like a colonial style
Yeah,
building.
what he said.
It was like a colonial style building with that ubiquitous green, heavy green and lime green colored buildings with strips of dark green. But the thing about it, like she mentioned, right up at the pool. So they had the main building in the middle, so it's like that would have been the main building. Then they had separate individual buildings on the property on the compound. You heard the
What
birds.
was the name of it?
I don't know if I want to. You know what? Let me go ahead and promote it. It's
Quinta de la Vista.
Quinta de la Vista,
Quinta
or
de
something
la
like
Vista,
that.
or something like that. But
Yes,
it was beautiful.
it was beautiful, and it was up on a hill on the western side of Funchal. So because we were up on an elevated location, we could look down and see the entire city, the
Yeah.
entire harbor, the most beautiful sunrises, and everything was just. So while we're up there, it was like walking through like a garden,
Yeah.
with nice manicured lawn, beautiful
And it's
trees.
not just that. I mean, the girl at the front desk, the receptionist, she basically walked us around the compound, and she was like, "Here's where you find the gym. Here's what it's open at this time." And she basically just walked us around, took us to the room and everything, and it just felt like we felt like the king and the queen. Basically, like the place is fit for that. It was beautiful.
It was not your traditional like glass building hotel.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. Now I must mention, it's a place that I guess a lot of retirees and older
Yep.
retirees, and because the island is known to cater so much to the British, a lot of British people were there. So we were like the youngest people there. I'm sure they looked around like, yeah. Yes, and we're the only ones that look like us there too. But that's why I felt rather special, because I forgot to mention when I booked the reservation, we had a travel service that dealt with all of this. I did not even look to see what the hotel looked like. I just figured, you know what, we're a bunch of poor folks. It's probably not going to be, we're not paying for all this luxury. So I figured when we paid the money, it was going to be like, just some regular hotel.
And I let him take care of everything,
Yeah.
so I really didn't look at anything.
Yeah, so I didn't even look at the hotel to see what it looked like. I figured it was just going to be like a regular hotel. And nothing big, nothing fancy. Maybe
But
a
it was
bed.
absolutely
Yeah,
beautiful.
but it turned out to be much, much, much more beautiful than I thought. Now, again, I promise to keep this video short. So we
Okay, so after we got to the hotel, we settled in. We drove down to the mall. What were we looking for? I can't remember what we were looking for, but we just went out for the sake of going out, because by that time we were tired anyway, because we just flew a couple of hours, and then just the overwhelming feeling of being there. It was just kind of like, what do we do? So we just went down into town. And we went to the mall, the shopping center, and that was just kind of it
for that
for that first day. And then we went back to the hotel, and then we were trying to figure out where to go for dinner, but we didn't know if we didn't make reservations anywhere, and we didn't just want to go driving around. So what we did was we decided to have dinner at the hotel. So we went, and they have this really, really nice
it's like almost like a little guest house off to the side.
yeah, and we just ordered some sandwiches, and then we just had dinner, and then we went back to the room, just watched some TV, and then fell asleep.
Yes, and something I know you guys may be wondering. The good thing about it is that, number one, it made it easy for us because you might be thinking like he just handed us the car and say go. It was easy for us because the driving is just like it is here in the United States. But we're from South Florida, which is very flat. So we don't have hills, we don't have mountains and so forth. But I am from the Virgin Islands, which has a bunch of hills and mountains, just like Madeira, a bunch of steep, winding roads up into the hills and so forth.
I'm not gonna lie, some of those hills were crazy. Like, there were times when I felt like, are we gonna fall backwards while we were driving up, or are we gonna just go down really, really fast when we were going down the
But
hill?
St. Thomas gave me experience, so I didn't have that.
I did not drive. I'm a licensed driver, and I refuse to drive because whew, those hills were not easy.
Yes.
But I was also a very good navigator. I'm the one that
Yes.
had the GPS open and telling him when to turn and where to turn. So I'm a very good navigator. So
Yes. So she
we
was,
mesh.
see, to share it, just like her great ancestor, she was able to navigate and tell me where to go, where to
Yeah, I'm a
turn,
good
where to go, and so
navigator.
forth.
So,
But
so our second day started
oh
off.
wait, woo! I don't know if we want to go to the second day, babe.
Yeah, just quickly. So okay, let's not go to the second day. We'll circle around
Because
back because we don't want to make the videos too long.
and I'm gonna
But
go
one of
ahead.
the biggest conundrums that I had when we were in Madeira was what to wear. Why? Because I didn't pay attention to the weather and I didn't ask questions.
And you heard
What?
island.
And I heard island. And what did I do? Walked with a bunch of cute little dresses because I'm figuring it's Europe and there's lots of flowers around and it's an island and it's going to be sunny and beautiful, so I'm just going to wear these cute little summer dresses, and I bought a ton of those and went with them only to feel cold and probably got to wear like 4 or 5 of them the whole trip. No, not even that many. And I was just like,
Yeah, it was still chilly. Um, it was somewhat gloomy. Well, we got a lot of sunshine while we was there, but the temperature was still, in probably upper 60s, mid 60s.
it was terrible.
So it was not exactly.
It was terrible for summer dresses. Let me put it that way.
Yes.
And it was disappointing because I had a ton of summer dresses. Luckily, I managed to walk with some shirts and jeans, and I don't know how come I managed that, but I ended up wearing shirts and jeans almost the entire trip because it was so cold and I couldn't wear my dresses. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was beautiful, but the weather sucked.
Well, I'm going to try to keep it here at 30 minutes. We're at 27 minutes right now. So what I'm going to point out is just have to stress this again. Our first view of the island is that it is just extremely beautiful. It was very clean. We felt very safe. These are things that her cousin did tell us, and he did tell us. He said, "You're gonna fall in love with the island," and I was like, "Yeah, I figured I
That
would."
first day that we were there, we did some walking because so my husband, out of respect for my cousin, didn't want to take the car around too much and just park it anywhere. So what we ended up doing was we parked it in a parking garage and we did some walking. And a couple of things that I noticed while we were walking. One, people don't walk with their heads down in their cell phones, which is, if you ever visited the States or you've lived in the States, you know that cell phones are a big thing here. So the school kids are walking, their heads are like this. Grown-ups, they're walking, their heads are like this. So that was amazing to see. People are extremely polite on the road. Like, we didn't hear car horns. When I tell you, that was shocking to us because here in the States, from the time the light turns green, it's beep. People just sit on their horns when the light literally just turned green 2 seconds ago. So we didn't hear horns. That's the other thing. So people are extremely polite on the roads. Driving in Madeira is extremely wonderful because they have so many roundabouts, and it's like you're not waiting forever for traffic lights and all of that. So even though I didn't drive, as the navigator, it was awesome because I was just like, take this exit or take that exit, do this on the roundabout or whatever. So driving in Madeira, I found it really good. He might beg to differ since he's the one that did the driving.
No, it was wonderful.
But it was wonderful. Then the other thing is too, in terms of people sitting and eating, even in places like KFC or McDonald's or just a mall, like heads were not buried in their phones. And I'm telling you, it might sound like a small thing, but that's such a major thing because it shows that, over there in Madeira, conversation is valued, where people's heads are not just in their phones all the time. So those are my main observations. And then of course all the banana plants and everybody with a farm in their yard, and then the beautiful flowers are all things that I absolutely fell in
And
love
all
with.
the tiles on the sidewalks and everything. We found out that the Portuguese seem to be fascinated by that stuff, but it's beautiful.
It is.
They just have all the tiles, but it was just so clean. It was just so
Safe
wonderful.
and
It
beautiful.
was just, we just love, just like her cousin predicted, we just literally fell in love with the
it,
place. And
yeah.
that was just the first day. That was just the first half of the day. So now it's about 29 minutes. We just want to just let you guys know, at least to get this started, tell you about our trip here to Madeira. So I want to tell you guys thank you so much. Those of you who have subscribed, I want to thank all of you who have commented so far. And we're going to get better with this. I'm going to do some more professional videos and a nice little intro and all that
So
good stuff.
like he
But
wants to do all that stuff, and I don't mind, but um for us, I wanted to share the raw experience so that you can see him and I were just two regular people. We visited a place that we fell in love with, and we want to share that with the world. Of course, there's more that can be done in terms of adding pictures and stuff like that, because I'd love to show some of the pictures that we took of places that we went to. But I like the raw, real content. I don't know how you guys feel about it, where it's not dressed up. You just get two people's experience who went to a place that you might be thinking about visiting. You may have visited already. So he's gonna do all the little fancy stuff, but for me, you're just gonna see me, maybe a different hairstyle, just telling you about my experience. And there's a lot more to come. So in the meantime, please like, comment, subscribe, and share, please.
Yes.
Because we have a lot more content coming, and I have a feeling a lot of it will be extremely helpful to some of you. And of course, we always welcome comments, and my husband is extremely responsive when it comes to comments, so we're very engaging. Outside of that, thank you guys for being on this journey so far with us. If you visited Madeira, if you visited Portugal, you know that the things that we're saying, they're not made up. We're not trying to sell the place or anything like that. We're merely sharing our experiences. But if you visited these places, you know exactly what we experienced and how wonderful Portugal is, especially Madeira.
Okay, so we lied. We're now 31 minutes. But
We're done. We're done.
But thank you guys so much for tuning in. And again, it was a fantastic experience for us. Of course, we have not told you the entire experience, but for us as descendants of people from Madeira, it was also like a spiritual journey back home. It was like a pilgrimage. So when we went there, so when we speak about Madeira, we may sound a little bit different from other people who have visited. We have an investment there. We're invested in the place because it's in our blood. It's in our system. That's where our ancestors came from.
And it 100% felt like home to me.
Yes.
Despite visiting it for the first time,
Right.
it felt like home.
Right.
And
Connection
I felt
there.
a sense of belonging there. And I don't know if it's because, like I said, I've always been attracted to that type of architecture, that type of environment my entire life, or it's that because deep down I know my ancestry is from there, that I feel this deep pull, this deep connection to the place. But for me, just setting foot on Madeiran soil was life-changing, because it allowed me to find out about where I came from, and that means a lot to me, considering how my family is set up.
Yes, so here we are. So please stick with us through this journey as we continue on and explain more to you. So until the next video, thank you so much. As my wife said, if you don't mind, can you just subscribe, like, and also share, tell other people about the video. And just like you see us right here, we are genuine people, and we're telling you our genuine experience.
And we're gonna show you our son soon enough,
yes.
Our 4-year-old. But we're trying to get this part of the story out of the way before we introduce him, because once we put him in front of the camera, he is not going to get up and go anywhere.
And he is a big reason and a big source of proof to show you how we are connected there, okay? Yeah. Anyway, you guys take care. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until the next time, this is Mad About Madeira from the Tysons, okay?
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.